Good morning. Welcome to the premiere edition of Time to Talk. Welcome to the program with Jen Graziano. That's Time to Talk with Jen Graziano. In addition to being a talk show host, Jennifer is an executive. She's a funeral director with your sister's cut. That's cut one. This is live, so we're going to do it again. All right. Let's come right back up. Good morning. Welcome to the premiere edition of Time to Talk with Jennifer Graziano. In addition to being a talk show host, Jennifer is an executive, the funeral director at Cox and Graziano and Zion Memorial Chapel. Jennifer is also an attorney, a publisher of Coming of Age magazine. Jennifer's gift is talking about those issues that are hard to discuss and that people would rather avoid, but not wherein she is concerned. And also, we understand she even has a line of jewelry that she's involved in these days. Without further ado, please welcome Jennifer Graziano. Good morning, Jen. How are you?
Good morning, Bob. It feels like a Wednesday again for me.
It does feel like a Wednesday, doesn't it? It's
Yes.
great to see you again, particularly behind a microphone. You know, you're so busy. You do so many different things. And in fact, I want to hold up the where you get to see it, folks. Coming of Age magazine. So I think I captured everything in the introduction, Jen. Talk show host. Now, you've been on several stations for several years. How long have you been doing this?
I wanted, in total, probably about 4 years now.
About 4 years.
About 4 years, I would say, yes.
What made you decide to get into the radio business?
I was approached, and I quickly became to notice that this was a subject that people wanted to talk about. So I probably had more discomfort than the audience.
Really?
I think people want to have uncomfortable conversations. They just don't know how to get it started. So I am the queen of uncomfortable conversations. What we really were doing something here with the show. We were talking about issues that people needed to discuss, whether it be time to go into assisted living, skilled nursing, when it's time to get healthcare proxies in place, legal planning, advanced planning, estates, wills, feuding families, funeral arrangements. We also did some really great community interest shows, raised awareness to a lot of great local causes, which I hope to continue to lend my voice to do. And all in all, the show just took on a life of its own and went into a little bit of a hiatus because sometimes life is a balancing act.
Oh, yeah.
And there are times where we balance better than others. And you learn to regroup, refocus, and start all over again. And in a lot of ways in my life, that's what I'm doing right now.
Well, I certainly understand that. Well, what was interesting for me watching you, I've been doing radio now more than 15 years, is Time to Talk started out because of, what you do, and you realized in your business, among other things. Again, I remind people she's a lawyer and a publisher, but in your business, you have to have difficult conversations with people.
So true.
But yet it led to a lot of things. In listening to your shows over the years, and even having been a guest once or twice, you talk about wellness, you talk about insurance, yes. You talk about making sure you get your life sorted out. You've talked about relationships, and all of these things are difficult things to talk about. At what point did you realize that difficult conversations moved into all these other areas as well?
I think that's just a part of living and being a regular person living life day to day. I'm a single mom and a full-time working single mom. And you learn there's a lot of life lessons to be acquired from that. And I think the uniqueness of my line of work, life is fragile, life is extremely short, and there's only one go-round at it. So you have to stop and take it all in. And like you said, in many realms of life, there are difficulties. Relationships, certainly, absolutely. I'm no stranger to that
we
myself.
all know about that.
Even like you said, insurance, Social Security, there's so many things that that they focus to just stand at attention and focus and be mindful. Wellness particularly, some people think that they're too old to do something or, it's too late to start. So there were so many larger messages that were coming out of the show that Nothing is too late. There's always time. If you're living, you're breathing, you're here, and there's still work left to be done. So the show really took on some much greater messages.
It absolutely did, and I wanted to make that clear because some of the things we'll talk about today, I will be asking you about what you do for a living and how that it changes you in a moment. But I just want to give people the full range, and then we'll dive into some of these issues again. You're listening to Time to Talk with Jennifer Graziano. This is her maiden show on Radio Westchester, and we're glad to have her, again, a colleague now for several years. Now, what's interesting about you, obviously, the funeral directorship is in the family. It's a family business.
I'm fourth generation.
Right, fourth generation. Your dad's still involved
Yes.
to some extent. Your brother.
Yes.
But you're also an attorney.
Yes.
You want to now that has to come in handy with what you do. But do you do that work on the side at all? Do you ever use that?
I do. I'm of counsel at a firm, Ferguson Cohen. They're
grief.
based in Greenwich, but they have offices in New York and Florida as well. I credit my father on this one, as I do many things. He always said, I don't want you to wake up one day and hate me for that you're stuck in the family business, and he wanted me to have options. And as a parent myself, perhaps that was one of the greatest lessons that I had from him, because I truly chose my line of work. I love being a funeral director. I love what I do. But I have a different skill set that I bring with me from being an attorney. So I handle the legal affairs for the funeral home. You kind of have a heightened awareness when it comes to compliance and legal documents.
Sure.
So it's an education that never leaves you. And I do get to dabble in it a bit, being of counsel. But I'm grateful for the education. And even now, one thing you learn as you get older and as you age, you learn that I think wisdom makes you realize that you don't know half as much as you think you do. There's always room to learn. So I love taking online courses. I love studying. I love learning something new. And I guess I'm smart enough to know that there's a lot I don't know. When you're in your 20s, you don't really see that as much. But, 40 makes that pretty clear.
You know what? One of the things, and you're hearing this from the horse's mouth, and I realize life is harder on a woman when it comes to age. But the best years of my own life have been 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. So you have a lot of life left to live, believe me, God willing.
Yes, no, and that is certainly the hope. But I'm not 40 yet. But it's coming.
No,
up.
but
It's
I'm
creeping
saying I
up
know
there.
that. But you're looking at it with fear, and I get that. Antipathy may even be the right word.
Yes.
But the fact that you keep learning and keep doing, you find that now you're involved with your daughter, which we'll talk about as well. And
Yes.
she's just a beautiful child,
Yes.
but she's also a figure skater. And as you know from some of the pictures here in the studio, we're very partial to skating.
Yeah, I believe you've been on skates once or twice, right?
We are very partial to that. Now, you're very close with your father. You speak of him often. You had him on your show about his book, as I did too. Has it always been thus?
Absolutely.
And you beam, folks, and you can see it now on camera. You beam when you talk about your
No,
dad.
I'm blessed. I have two wonderful parents, and I've learned so much from both of them. It's all about how you're raised, I believe, and a little bit of luck. So, I think parents are very well intentioned, but oftentimes luck has something to do with raising your children. So many lessons. I watched my father go to work every day and build something. Although his family was in the funeral business, he went off on his own and created something in Westchester, because my mom's family is a longtime Rochelle family. So I watched something that I take with me. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, but she did it well. I see stay-at-home moms today that they stay home, but they don't do the things that my mom did. My mom was involved in this school. She had dinner on the table every night. She explained to us why my father was working. I don't believe he would have been a success were it not for her. So I'm appreciative of those things now, because although I'm a working mom, I still feel that my daughter needs to see those elements that my mom gave me, that I'm involved in the school, that I make dinner for her, and that can't fall by the wayside. But I learned so much from my father in the funeral home. I don't know if he realized he was teaching me, because I think he was just living and being himself. But he taught me that this is truly a sacred line of work. It's a sacred calling. I know this is It's not
That's
for
a
the
wonderful
faint of heart.
attitude, though, that it is a sacred calling.
It is. And, he always said if it becomes a job, it's time to leave. And I understand what he means by that. But what everybody, it was the greatest feeling to, no matter where I went in life, people would say, oh, you're Vinny's daughter. Or they would tell a story of how, someone passed away and he would come to the house at 2:00 in the morning. Or on Christmas, I always remember Christmas time, he would bring me to visit families that we had served. And that was such a part of my upbringing. And you realize that the bonds you're forming, this is not just like a 3-day transaction that people come in, someone's passed away, and then the wake and funeral happen. It really lasts a lifetime. I was kind of like the adopted granddaughter of Mamaroneck, if you will, in Harrison.
Adopted granddaughter.
Yeah, but it was a great thing. So these are connections that, I know I chose the right path. I don't think if I just stuck with the attorney route, I mean, I'm sure you would have made connections, but not these lifelong bonds. You're walking through moments with people, Bob, that are the most awful
Some
in
of the
their
most
life.
critical and awful in their lives.
Yes. And they know, when they know they can trust you and they can call you. I mean, my phone goes off really all day, but it's I understand it. And my daughter is amazingly accepting of this line of work. She gets it. She's 8. But, sometimes I think I'm really screwing up because I'm always on the phone or I'm at work, but she gets it. And
we're going to talk about that in a minute. Continue.
She herself said to me, I was on speakerphone, of course, thanks to Bluetooth, and I'm having this conversation, and you try to shield your kids. So, I try to avoid using the word die, death. It's interesting. But here she is in the back of the car, and I'm speaking to a woman whose mom was about to pass. So I'm trying to be euphemistic to Mia, but address this woman's concerns and make her realize that her mom will be in good hands. And talk about balance. But we ended the conversation, and Mia said, wow, Mom, you're just a great person. And
that's nice.
And I started crying, and I said, well, not that she saw it, but I said, well, what do you mean? She says, I know that's not an easy thing to say to somebody what you were talking about. And that's special. And in that moment, I thought, wow, maybe I haven't screwed up as badly as maybe I thought previously. But she understands she understands what I'm doing.
And she does, doesn't she?
She does.
You know what's interesting, and I remind people that you are listening to the premiere of Time to Talk, starring Jennifer Graziano. And as we said at the beginning, yes, she is an executive. She's a funeral director with Cox and Graziano and Zion Memorial Chapel. As you'll find out, she's a talk show host with an eclectic range of topics that she covers. We'll be talking about her magazine, Coming of Age, even a line of jewelry. But I want to go back to something. I know that you had asked me once to MC an event at the school.
Yes.
And so I'm going to list a few things. But one of the things I learned about that, I know you work a lot. I know, and I love the way you put it. You want to give your daughter the same home life that a stay-at-home mom would. So you're home to cook every night. You do these things with her. You're involved in her school, and you do all these things. What do you do for you? What do you do for you? What's fun for you? Well, obviously, and anyone checks your Facebook page, they better get used to your daughter because most of your photos of yourself are with her.
Yes.
What are your hobbies? What do you like?
My hobbies.
If you have any, or we have time to have any.
I'm kind of boring.
You're boring?
Well,
we'll deal with that as we move on.
I love my friends. I love to spend time with friends. I love to catch up and go out to dinner and, have a glass of wine. I'm blessed with so many friends.
In fact, you're very loyal to your friends. I've noticed on Facebook that some of your pictures, you have one cousin and another friend. They're almost in every shot of your social life. Yeah, no, I'm close.
We're a big
That's
group.
Really
the
nice.
Cousins are big. I try to hold them all together. But I'm lucky. Like my closest group of friends happens to be my cousins. They're
That's kind of
nice.
nice.
An extended group of sisters, and Mia is blessed to know that. So I come from a huge family on both sides. So I love to spend time with family. Personally, I'm in a great place right now, so I do have a great personal life. I like to get to the gym. I don't do it regularly.
It's
I'm not one of
hard.
those people who go and I'm excited to be there. I go because I feel like I've paid for this. I have to go, and genetics are a funny thing, and I have like an uphill battle. So I go because
Do you have
I
an uphill
feel.
battle? Why?
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not easy. Like I'm not. I wasn't born with this amazing metabolism, and
You're in good shape.
it's a work in progress. Actually,
A work in
I
progress?
went grain free. I actually did. So
Now you're grain
I'm
free?
grain free. This has been a big family debate because you can't come from an Italian family and be grain free. And being grain free on
Gotta have
Christmas
that
Eve.
bread.
Oh my gosh.
You didn't do it on Christmas
I
Eve, did you, Jennifer?
I'm not
Come
gonna
on.
lie. I cheated. I had 3 rings of fried calamari, and I felt it. But no, I went grain free. So I try to be healthy. Health is important to me. I love to read.
What do you like to read?
I actually love to read nonfiction. I love biographies. I
you're
love
just like me that
political
way.
novels.
I love that
If I'm
stuff.
reading, I have to be learning something. So a little nerdy in that way. I'm very faith-filled, very spiritual.
Nerdy is good.
My faith is at my core.
Mm-hmm.
I read at Mass. I really do believe that there's something bigger than me going on, and that grounds me. And that also enables me to see past difficult moments, be it my own or helping families in tragedy.
You answered a question before I asked it. It must help you in what you do.
It does, and it's been an evolving relationship. I didn't always have it, and without it, it becomes, you watch suffering every day. You watch sadness every day, and it weighs on you. So you need to draw back upon something. So I've had an evolving relationship with my faith, but that's a huge part of me. Other than that, I guess I like to shop. So that's
that puts you in a lot.
I don't know. I
company.
think I'm a boring person. Though,
No,
Bob.
actually,
I really
you're not a
do.
boring person. No, it's not possible. And by the time we're done with your premiere show, people will realize you're not a boring person, Jen Graziano. One of the things I'm sure you take joy of, because I showed you the picture of my grandson when I watch him play hockey, and he and I've played together a lot as well. That is one of the most joyful things I do. Now, when you watch your daughter skate, you must, like I noticed before, and I'm going to out you, when you were talking about your dad and then your daughter, you started to get emotional, and I could see it in your eyes.
When I watch her skate and do, I don't know any of the terminology, but when she jumps or twirls or picks up her skate behind her, I'll be in the bleachers and I'll have this like moment, and people will look at me and I'll be like, that's my kid. It's such a proud moment. But what I love so much about her, I love how. I teach her. I'm like, you were blessed with gifts. I mean, she's also an amazing piano player, and
No
she has a
kidding.
voice. And she'll actually tell me, my gift was the singing voice. Mom, yours is the spoken voice, like the reading voice.
Have
And
you
I'm
ever
like,
tried to
okay.
sing with her, or
It's
is
not
that
my
something
thing.
you avoid? It's
I
not
avoid it. It's not my thing. I'm gonna use this microphone for good, not bad.
Okay.
But there's such a beaming pride because she is talented and she's working for something, and I want her. I said, if you have something, then we're going to run with it. And she is my life's work. You can do a lot in this world professionally, but I think your legacy are the people that you leave
being
behind.
a parent, yeah,
So if
absolutely.
I produce a healthy, well-adjusted human being and put them out into this crazy world, then I think I've done my job. Family is everything, though. I'm blessed that my brother is local and he raises his children here, and they're very close. So I have a niece and nephew that are like,
Isn't that great to have family close?
they're amazing. My niece and my daughter are the same age. They're like, if they could be Siamese twins, I'm sure they would opt for that. And I have a nephew that, he's such a comedian in the making. He's so funny.
It seems like they're following after the last generation, where you and your cousins are so close.
Yes, no, it's true. I see that. And, for my daughter being an only child, which is, it's always been a little bit of a silent struggle for me. I love that she has this extended network of family. There's always someone around us, and it's just being part of me is all of them. So we travel in packs.
Well, I can see that. Well, folks, you're listening to, in fact, it's her first show, the premiere show of Time to Talk with Jen Graziano, an extended version on this opening day. And we're using today for you to get to know her a little bit. She is in the doc, and she calls herself boring. And as you learn as we get through this hour plus, anything but. Now, I'm taking notes here of the jobs you have, and I'm already up to 3. Now, why on top of all of these other things, this magazine? And tell us about the magazine, and it's called Coming of Age.
Well, coming of age, you know, I feel like everything has like a chain effect. You know, everything links up to the chain. So the magazine really puts in print everything that I was doing through the show. There needed to be an additional forum to have these discussions. So this is something that I thought of. I happen to love to write. That was always one of my passions. And
You didn't mention it when I asked you about things you love to do. So yeah,
I'm
I
learning
caught
about
you on.
myself.
But you're
I
learning about
forgot.
yourself as you
I
talk
forgot.
about yourself. Go ahead.
I've always loved to do this. I actually worked with a mutual friend of ours, Jennifer Lancer, who's amazing, who I met through my radio career. And I found, again, people were so receptive to what the show was talking about, and I thought it shouldn't stop there. So I love to write, and I wanted to create something that put articles, meaningful articles, in one place that could be a free resource to people. So this is something that you can pick up at libraries, senior centers, doctor's offices, nail salons, health clubs. It's really gone quite far. Coming of Age, I titled it because you kind of come into yourself as you get older. Each year, I think you become a better version, the 2.0 of yourself, if you will. And we talk about things that are real. So family issues was the last issue, and it's just a real thing. And you know, maybe I have an advantage of seeing different situations through my line of work, but family feuding is real.
You think?
Yeah, and even when you're not prepared, not having plans in place really creates lasting ripple effects. So I try to educate and raise awareness on that. So we had a local attorney, Patty Bave. She's going to be a guest on my show in the coming weeks here, who talks about the what ifs if you don't have a plan in place, the scenarios of the feuding children or the you know, geographically distant children or not having children, and who speaks for you. The what ifs are so real, and the irony is that you have to think about the worst case scenarios when you're happy and healthy, and that's the hardest thing for people.
But that's what makes it a difficult conversation, because no one wants to talk about these things. And I'm just going to share with people some of the things in here. First, there's an editor's note by Jennifer and a beautiful black and white picture of you. I get to say that.
Thank you.
Don't be. Oh. And then, of course, there's a beefcake on the next page. 3 secrets to rejuvenating muscle health. Just
yeah,
in case
I
you think
don't
I'm
know who he is, people. I wish
no,
I did.
I'm just getting.
The photo didn't come off my phone for sure.
And then it broke the bubble, because after that, actually, I like string beans. Very delicious photo of string beans and.
String beans.
Aren't they string? What are they? Or is that
Oh,
asparagus?
vegetable. No, those are string beans.
I told you, string
You're
beans and
right.
carrots.
You know, you're
The
vegetables.
photography's great. Whoever did that, my compliments to the.
Yeah,
the
no,
chef.
Jennifer's amazing. Jennifer really is credited for so much of the creative on the magazine.
And then apropos of what you're talking about, a plan that makes a difference. Now, as you know, I myself do a lot of different things. Deadline on a magazine this is a lot of work. Where do you find the time to do this? In the shower? Do you bathe and then write when you're in the tub?
No, I haven't mastered that skill. You know, a lot of my thinking comes at night. I find I'm kind of always thinking during the day. You find time. I've always believed if you want to do something, you will do it. Where there's a will, there's a way. It's cliche, but it's true. You know, so, and again, through talking about the radio, I've made great connections. So I'll say to somebody, I'll reach out and I'll say, I'd like you to do an article. I kind of develop the theme, what I want in there, and then you just work with the right people and it makes it happen. And I do it for 3 times a year. There will be one coming out. I'll have to be getting in touch with Jennifer soon, because the ideas
But what's the
starting
name
to
of?
come.
Oh, you don't have the ideas.
It's going to be Coming of Age. So the theme, actually, I'm really going to focus on. So Zion Memorial, my family's Jewish funeral home, is celebrating 25 years in the community, and it's quite a milestone. It's a quarter of a century, but we have done something in that market that no one has replicated. To date, we are the only independently owned all Jewish funeral home in Westchester County.
That's right.
So I really want to dedicate an issue to that, talking about the relationships we form with rabbis, talking about some of the issues that are impacting this community in Westchester County. Recently, across the bridge in Rockland, we witnessed some terrible acts of anti-Semitism. And I want to, again, I use this platform to raise awareness, and I'm grateful to have the ability to do that. So the next issue will have a focus on that and kind of the journey. When an Italian family went into the Jewish funeral business 25 years ago, it wasn't immediately received by all, I will say that. And what people didn't realize is my father's background, although his family was in the business, my father began as a manager of a Hasidic funeral home in Brooklyn.
Whereabouts?
On Fort Hamilton Parkway,
Yeah,
Sean
I
Ray
know the area
Hadass.
well.
And the reason being was,
That's where I'm from.
Really? Well, traditionally, if you were of the Jewish faith, you could not become a funeral director because part of that New York requirement was going to mortuary school, which required embalming. And that's antithetical to the Jewish faith. So my father was the licensed manager and worked for many years. For 23 years, he helped them. Even when he was up here, he maintained those connections. It was those rabbis who encouraged him to open Zion because they said you had no choices. You either had to go to the conglomerates, the Riversides, which were very expensive, or you had to go to funeral homes that were housed inside a Christian facility. So you were at the mercy of those services that took precedence.
So was it his idea to start Zion?
He thought about it, he toyed with it, and he had some rabbis that really served as mentors to him. He, to this day, will call upon some of the wisdom that was shared by him. There was a Rabbi Ziskin, Rabbi Greinerman. Actually, one rabbi until his death would send him a Christmas gift every year. It's such a beautiful connection they had. So they encouraged him to open it, and in 1995 he did. And it took some time, but when the rabbis saw the difference, they just began to exclusively endorse Zion. And now we have relationships where there's one rabbi in particular, Rabbi Siegelman in Mamaroneck, who I could listen to him speak all day from the pulpit. I really learned so much
terrific.
from him.
There was a Rabbi Amil Wall who you may have known.
Yes,
Rochelle.
I do. Temple Israel, yes.
Yeah, wonderful man. He's since passed. But
yes.
I used to kid him. He had that voice. I said, your voice sounds like it's coming from the burning bush.
That's exactly. It's
he
so
had that
funny.
wonderful voice, isn't
It's
it?
that voice that captivates you. So, really grateful for the inroads that we've made there. And I think, sometimes I say that they do it right when it comes to funerals because there's a mindfulness. It's rooted in tradition. It's not reinventing the wheel. It's, we are dust, and to dust we all shall return.
Quick. Although the putting the soil on the box, if you haven't seen that, is tough to take for a Christian who hasn't seen it before.
And again, everything's rooted in tradition. So that's a mitzvah. That's an act of kindness. That's actually the last mitzvah you can perform for somebody is shoveling a piece of that earth on top of the casket.
Now,
it's amazing.
Let's go there for a moment,
Sure.
if we may. And I remind people, the reason that we're talking about Zion Memorial Chapel is it's a part of Jennifer's life. Jen Graziano, this is her show, Time to Talk. She'll be with you every other Wednesday at 10 o'clock. Now, she is a talk show host. She's been on a few stations now over many years, an eclectic range of guests and topics. And we wrote here that she's an executive, but that's because she is the funeral director of Cox and Graziano and Zion Memorial Chapel. She's an attorney, a publisher now, as you know, and we'll be getting even into her jewelry and then diving into these issues in a moment. But Jen, didn't you have to develop a whole new set of understandings to do a Jewish funeral home as opposed to a Christian home?
It's very true. The common denominator is that we all grieve and we all suffer and incur losses in our life. So that's the common denominator that ties us all. I think you need to have a healthy respect for all cultures, faiths, beliefs. You believe what you believe personally, but you have to respect the fact that a belief is just that. It's something that's very dear to someone. When you have that healthy respect, I think it transcends. You could help somebody of any religion, of any faith. And I think you find that middle ground. But I do have a tremendous respect for the Jewish faith. And like I said, I've learned a lot. And you kind of watch the circle of life completed through those traditions. And I respect tradition. I'm an old soul. And I always felt that about myself. And I just respect the tradition, that it's rooted in purpose, it's rooted in principle, and people thousands of years later still draw upon traditions that they go through when someone passes away.
Oh, it's a foundation, really.
And that I'd say is a bit more unique to the Jewish side of the funeral business.
Let's move on to your jewelry, because we're going to drill down on all these different areas of your life and then what it's like to do an eclectic show such as you do. When did you start your jewelry business?
So the jewelry business was an idea in my head for many years before it became a reality. And then last year I said, okay, enough is enough. It's time to take it out of my head and put it, in real life.
Now, how does now there are ways to run a jewelry business and not know anything about it.
I totally don't know anything about it.
Okay, so what is it that you wanted to achieve?
So what I did was my concept was a bar. I'm actually wearing my bar. This is the
I can't
the
get
first
drunk at that bar. Yeah.
So it's called Remember. It's a trademark line of jewelry.
Remember.
Remember. It's a little, it was a little kitschy, I thought.
That is nice.
So Remember, it's a line of pendants, bracelets, and rings. And it's a hollowed out bar, which is a very difficult process. And they're all made in Bangkok, admittedly, because this is not something that you would easily find here. It is a hollowed out bar that contains a small portion of your loved one's remains or a lock of hair.
Really?
And on the bar
Is there something in the bar you're wearing?
No, this is just personal to me because
Okay.
this was my baby. The birthstone of your loved one is on the bar, and the sentiment "Remember" is delicately etched
birthstone is
inside.
there?
Happens to be my birthstone. This is a diamond. I was born in the right month. Mom and Dad could work.
What diamond is what now?
April.
Oh, okay. Cool.
April.
April when, by the way? You're not are you an Aries?
I am an Aries.
So am I.
You're
March 25th.
You're March. That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Beware the Ides of March, Jen Graziano. That's interesting. So the birthstone is the diamond.
So the birthstone, yes. So if you were picking this for a loved one who passed away, you would pick their birthstone. Remember is always inscribed on the side delicately, and you can add an additional custom engraving to it. And I have to tell you, Bob, so the first piece came out in August. There's been about 60 of them sold since then, and I'm watching people in town now have these, or they
How do
come
you
to the
market
funeral.
it?
I have a website that is almost ready.
You should give it. Go ahead.
Yes,
now.
and it's going to be remembercollection.com. There's a temp site up. I am marketing it through word of mouth, through wearing it. Other funeral homes are going to be carrying it. But I have to tell you, it's serving its intended purpose, because the idea is love lives on, and it's comfort. And when people lose somebody, it's the tangible that they miss. It's that you can't touch them. You can't hear their voice. You want to hold them. This I'm watching give people this comfort that makes me realize this did the right thing. They open the box and they are just immediately comforted, and you carry your memories with you.
Well, what's kind of nice about that, I mean, I'm going to confess to something now that you'll laugh at, but my daughter got a Great Dane right when she graduated college. It passed away a long time ago. And I want nothing to do with it. I said, that's it, blah, 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 blah. Next thing, I started walking it every day, fell in love with the dog, fell in love with it.
Became a child to you, I'm sure.
And I kept a lock of his hair that I
Yes.
still have
Yes.
in a little thing.
Yes.
My grandson, when he was little, every little thing that he ever picked up on the ground, a rock, or if he bought something, a little ball or anything, I have it in a little glass case.
I believe
so
it.
I get that.
I'm a sentimental person by nature. So again, that was part of the
Now, is that
reason
the
to-
only thing? By the way, can a man get one of those? And
There's a
I'd
men's
imagine
line.
it would be shorter.
There's a very good, Bob. So there is a men's
See,
line
I
of
could design jewelry.
bracelets,
Go ahead.
bracelets and necklaces. The bar is a little shorter, a little wider. We don't recommend the full schematic of birthstone, so we kind of do black diamond, white diamond to commemorate a male or female loss. But I have plenty of men that have purchased this, and I see them wearing it. And again, it gives this really intended comfort. Love lives on. They're not here, but the love is still there. The love is still here. And it's really been gratifying to see the response. So this is something to watch for.
Remember, where can
Remember.
people go after that?
Well,
One more time, give me the website.
it's going to be remembercollection.com, but my contact information to email me, Jennifer, 2 N's, traditional spelling. I never knew there were so many ways to spell Jennifer.
I always say the 2 N's to everybody.
Thank
See,
you.
See that little note there, Jen?
Oh, no, 1 N in Jen. Oh, my God, this is a conversation for another day. It's
You
1
just
N
said
in
2
Jen, 2 N's in Jennifer.
Oh, God, you're kidding
I'm an
me.
old soul, Bob. Keep it simple. But Jennifer at
So I messed up.
Graziano.
Okay, fine.
Well, it was only for
Think I've
your
been
eyes
doing
until you
pretty
broadcast it.
Good, should not have. I just told the whole world. I misspelled her name. And
That's okay.
No, actually, I got it
Leela.
both ways, 50%. Go ahead.
There you go. Call me at 914-698-5968.
Give it again. You people they're stumbling for their pen.
Looking for their pen. 914-698-5968. 5968 to learn more now. But when the site is ready, I will certainly announce
Now,
it
that's
here.
the Remember. You mentioned bracelets and stuff. Are you wearing anything else?
No,
now?
I'm not. Bracelets, rings.
That is a beautiful bracelet.
Thank you. My aunt worked for David Yurman many years ago, and this is from her. And actually, the designs for the jewelry came from, no joke, little Post-it notes and pieces of paper and Mia's colored pencils. So I credit her with this.
Wait. Post-it notes and colored
Yeah,
pencils.
I would sketch it out, and then I
At the kitchen table, you.
and I teamed up with a designer who has a background in David Yurman and Tiffany. And so we're working with a legit person on this. But, you know, what was great, you know, when Mia saw that, I want to teach her anything is possible. And if you have an idea, it'll always be an idea until you do something about it. So I want her to know anything is possible. And she's watched everything from the grassroots of this project, everything from, the legal papers, opening a bank account, the drawings, and I hope that it gives some good inspiration from her down the road.
Where do you want to take this particular jewelry business? How do you want to take it as big as it can get? Do you have other ideas for jewelry or other people working on
Well,
I
mean, I'm developing a line right now that is just sentimental remembrance jewelry that doesn't necessarily have to hold anything in it. Because, again, for me, I take tremendous comfort in that. I have my grandmother's wedding ring that I usually wear, or other great bracelets from my other grandmother.
You are an old soul.
I like to be reminded of things, and it just provides a tangible comfort. And I think we all need comfort, and we're all searching for something, and we're all suffering from something. Some it's more visible than others. Some have it together on the outside more than others. Mm-hmm. But whatever personal comforts you can afford yourself, I think you should.
For a woman who is self-possessed and confident and doing all these things, there's more Jennifer in there, a lot more Jennifer. There's an emotional and sentimental Jennifer. Would I be off the mark?
No, there is.
Yeah, we can see that. All right, I want to take you back a little bit, and then we'll get to where you want to take the rest of your life. Jen with one N. If I say Jennifer, it's two N's.
I'm glad we had this discussion.
I'm glad we had this discussion. See, this is difficult conversation. I misspelled her name. I am now going to be excommunicated from her life. Let's go back to what you did. What you do and what your father trained you to do has left an impression on you way beyond the job. There's this issue of remembrance. Okay, I know one of my great fears, believe it or not, is that I should die and my daughter and grandson and granddaughter won't remember me. It's my biggest fear, when I do die, not if I should die. You've obviously picked that up along the way. Remembrance, you've mentioned remembrances about the rings you wear, about the jewelry your aunt gave you. You've mentioned these remembers. And we all have, as I mentioned with my dog, little kinds of things we do. What is it about what you do? How has it affected your view of life? A. B. How has it resulted in these kinds of things in the magazine?
It goes back to something I said earlier. It's not a dress rehearsal that we're here. This is your one shot. And I think, and I speak for myself.
Get a little closer to the mic. I can tell you since you made me misspell a word.
I speak for myself. It's not a commentary on people in general, but I think a lot of people are affected by this. We become complacent. We settle. Things just become okay, and things just become routine. And then it's my line of work that gives me that perspective to snap out of it. We get one chance in life. So the things you do matter. The relationships you have matter. The people you spend your time with matter. The life partners you choose matter. And, I come from a humble perspective. I was married at 30 and divorced at 33. But I'm grateful for any of, there's no looking back because, again, I realized that there's a purpose to everything, but you have to make good decisions in life. And when you make decisions realizing that they will affect others, they'll affect you, yourself, I think when you're mindful and you realize, again, we have one shot at life, I just think you go through it in a different way. And I'm guilty of things, I think I overload myself, I get very busy, and then you stay busy professionally to distract yourself personally. And I know I've done that for quite some time. But again, it all comes back to the overriding message that I learned. I'm grateful to have learned from my line of work that this counts. Everything that you do counts. And you want to go into remembrance. You want to be remembered just for being a person who cared and who tried their best. I don't look for perfection. I'm far from it. But my heart is in the right place, and my heart is in the
Clearly.
things that I do. And if you have to be known for something, then what better to be known for than that?
Now, you've made, at least in my view, a lot of courageous decisions. It's not easy to admit a marriage isn't working and get divorced. It's easy to stay complacent and just go with it. It's easy to just find a nice job in the family business and cruise. You did none of those things, okay? But yet, one of the things I'm hearing, and I've got to go there because people listening would be surprised that you've a couple of times said you think you're failing, you've done things you regret, well, which we all do. But there's this other side of you that's questioning you. Like, we all work sometimes to ameliorate pain. What is it? Woody Allen, who said sometimes to get through this life, you have to distract yourself.
So true.
But I don't know that you should make it an indictment. How generally do you feel about yourself?
I'm feeling pretty good.
Good. I'm glad. You get a little closer to the mic again.
I'm
So I
feeling
get to
pretty
give her
good.
a hard time.
No, life is good. Really, life is again, life is what you make of it. But life is good. You surround yourself with great people, and you do what you love to do every day. And like I said, you always try your best and put your heart in the right place. And I think that's an easy formula.
Well, we're going to start with your business as we now take you through those jobs. What have you learned the most being a funeral director? And it's a very prosaic thing to say, but that's what you do. One of the things. What have you learned?
Life is so precious. It's a gift. You wake up in the morning, it's a gift. And it can't be taken for granted. Not everyone is blessed with that. And like I said, life is not a dress rehearsal. This is your one go around. So make it count and don't settle.
Well, you sure do.
Don't settle.
You really do. Now let's talk about your radio career. You talked a little earlier about going out into all these different areas. Let's start with, what's the most interesting guest or type of guest you've ever had?
We've run the gamut with guests. I mean, I was blessed to interview Gretchen Carlson a few years ago. I've interviewed best-selling New York Times authors. One of the best interviews, I look back, I had so many, but there was a book that I read, Proof of Heaven, which was a neurosurgeon's.
I remember you interviewed that
Dr.
person.
Alexander, Eben Alexander.
Yeah,
He was
I
a
interviewed
neurosurgeon.
him for a much shorter interview later.
He had a near-death experience, and doctors are very myopic, and no discredit to doctors, they're wonderful, but they kind of see the world in this black and white realm. And this man went through this journey of a near-death experience, being in a coma, and with such descriptive, so vivid and candid, he talked about this journey, and it changed him, and it changed his outlook on life. So the book inspired me. I blogged about it, and I was fortunate enough to have him as a guest, and that pretty much stands out in my mind. We've had the Organ Donor Network come on kind of to talk about that. I lost a dear friend of mine who was a champion of that cause. So shows like that.
Is this the individual from Harrison?
Yeah,
Joe,
I know him
well.
Casella.
Joe, what a courageous young man.
Beyond. So when you have a show that can connect to something meaningful, I think that's great. Like I said, I like to lend my voice to important topics and causes when I can. Having my dad as a guest on the air was great. He's written 2 books. He has a third one about to be published.
What's it about?
The third one's a total mystery to me. I haven't read it.
He hasn't told you? What's its title?
Oh, jeez.
Jen with 2 N's. That's what he should do. Jen with 2 N's, just to be
I
ironic.
want to say the Romeo Project. I do. My daughter would know this because she follows Papa's writing career. But the Family Jewels were the last one, and they're all like loosely based accounts of his life. Like he says loosely, and I'm like, okay, Dad, you're clearly talking about your siblings and your parents here. But
Yeah, he's got to be careful.
But he protects the names to change. Names change to protect the innocent. But no, it was fun having him on. I've done some shows kind of talking about the funeral business, which I think are interesting. The when it's time to have these discussions of moving families, downsizing, I think those are really important conversations that we've had. People also who come from the assisted living healthcare communities to talk about why they're different and the importance to maintain quality of life. It's not about the quantity of your years. It's truly the quality. So I always welcome shows like that. But again, to be able to connect to an audience weekly and talk about subject matters that are relevant, it's a gift. It's a blessing.
Do you find that you learn a lot doing
Oh,
these
absolutely.
shows? You really do, don't you?
Absolutely. I learned so much on this end of the microphone. You really, insightful guests really have a lot to say. I learn just as much as the audience does.
Anything you don't like about it?
No, it's funny. It was like one of those things when I grew up, I wanted to be a talk show host. And so it was kind of a fun way to, check it off a list.
Well,
if
at
you
least,
will.
yeah, it is.
Bucket
At
list.
least you haven't you haven't complained about the show prep, which, as you know, can be enormous.
Yeah, no, again, it's exciting. It's live. It's real. It's raw. Things happen. I remember being with you on a morning show when there was some breaking. Roger Ailes passed away.
Yes, yeah, and
I
had
got
to
to
break
co-host
into it.
with you. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's exciting. It's live stuff, and you know what I think too. We hope the next generation that comes up, still understands the value of radio and live and being unscripted, and you wonder what kids are going to know.
No, you really do. Again, my
Scary.
guest, and I remind you, we talk about eclectic. Her show is eclectic, but her life even more so. Jen Graziano, and when you just say Jen, you use one N. If you say Jennifer, you use two, or she will be angry with you. This is the premiere of her show, heard every other Wednesday here at 10 o'clock on Radio Westchester, Time to Talk. In addition to being a talk show host, and you just heard about that, she's also very well known for being an executive. She is the funeral director for Cox and Graziano's Funeral Homes, as well as the Zion Memorial Chapel, the only privately owned, if I understand it, Jewish chapel here
In
in
Westchester, yeah.
She's an attorney. We're going to talk about that in a moment, but more importantly, we're going to talk about publishing of Coming of Age magazine and her line of jewelry. Now, Jen, I'm having a difficult time trying to figure out how you balance all this. How do you now? And I want to tie it back to what you said a little earlier about being using it as a distraction, which I don't see. I just see you doing what your father suggested. Don't have any regrets. Don't look back.
It's so true. No, and that's a big part of it. Again, you can always find time in the day. If you want to do something, you can will yourself to do it. And for me, I'm doing what I love. And, people look at it as, oh my gosh, doing one more thing. I don't. I think you have to be the most productive version of yourself. And like I said, you get one go around of this life. So do the things that you want. But I do find a balance. Again, I'm there for pick up and drop off every day for Mia.
You are. How do you fit that in?
Because again, you can do whatever you want. You can will yourself to find the time to do anything that's important. I have a wonderfully supportive boyfriend. But I make time for a relationship, and which is not easy to do as a single mom.
You managed to fit a relationship into all
I
this,
do.
too. Good for you.
I do. But again, you can will yourself to do the things that you want to do. Where there's a will, there's a way. I make time for friends. You don't balance everything equally. You have to prioritize, and Mia always comes first. But anything is possible. Anything is doable.
Talk about difficult subjects. I have been there. Our children always come first.
Yes.
Especially the way you were brought up.
Yes.
I was brought up. That sometimes makes a relationship difficult.
Yes.
And have you had to navigate those waters in your life as well, like the rest of us?
It's all about finding the right people
That understand that.
And I think that, she's always at my focus and my forefront. And sometimes, and she has a unique situation. I mean, I raised her completely alone, but sometimes you make decisions that you think are in her best interest. You look at you're short-sighted and you say, well, it's better for her to have someone there. And then you realize that if it's not the right person, and I've always taught her that, then we're better off alone. And I truly do believe that.
That is true.
And I think if you are a parent and you are in a relationship with someone else who is a parent, that helps tremendously.
Oh, yes.
Because there's a certain mindfulness that a parent brings, that they get it. But I think it's when you find the right person, everything can fit and fall into place. But I think as long as you maintain your focus that your child is at the forefront, everything will fall into place behind that or around that.
Now, it seems to me, too, you have some geographical challenges. I know you have one of the homes is in Mamaroneck, one of your
Two
homes.
of them, Zion and Cox
Right,
Graziano,
and,
Mamaroneck.
and of course the other one is in Greenwich.
Greenwich.
So you're dropping off your child, you're picking her up, you're making dinner for her at night, you're going to school events.
I mean, I order out too. I'm not a saint, so.
No, all right. Yeah, and who knows what kind of a cook you are. But in Italian, you're probably a good cook. We'll give
I think
you
I'm
that.
decent.
Yeah,
I don't know.
We'll give you that. You have to be on call because people don't die according to your schedule.
It's not a 9 to 5.
Okay,
thing, though.
no, it is not. You do a radio show. You did it here. You did one in Greenwich. You did one in elsewhere here in New Rochelle. Do you keep your schedule in a computer, or do you write the old-fashioned on a list? How do you do it?
It's funny. I used to remember a lot better. Like I will say, it's. I don't
Oh,
wanna
you're
say
such an old woman.
I don't want to say I'm
Such
losing it. No, but
such
it's harder.
a hag.
Thanks,
A
Bob.
boring hag.
Exactly. But it's harder. I tend to prefer to write things down rather
Me
than
too.
the old calendar. And the ability to cross off is an amazing feeling. So as much as like people live by their phones, I'm not necessarily that person. But I do find that I will put I'll set reminders. So that's the one reason I like my phone. So if I'll say I have to be here at this day, this time, I can remind myself 24 hours before. I'm routine for the most part, though. Obviously, my work is not, day to day. It could change so much. But, the dropping off and picking up me apart is always pretty routine. So that's good.
Okay, well, you, that sort of anchors your day. in a
Yeah.
way.
And, funerals are in the morning. I make arrangements around that. I make a lot of pre-arrangements with people who are planning ahead.
Well, they don't plan ahead to die, though.
Well, they plan ahead for, so their children don't have to make decisions.
Oh, I see. I
And
get
I'm a
you.
huge advocate of that because your wishes need to be known. Your wishes need to be carried out. And if you're not exercising your voice, who's speaking on your behalf?
It's interesting you say that. In the famous movie The Irishman, Robert De
I haven't
Niro
seen
picks
it.
out his casket and where he wanted to be in a closet rather than, that's
Right.
what I call them.
The mausoleum.
The mausoleum. My mother wanted that too, 5th floor.
But again, if you don't know that, then you don't know that.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. So when I make arrangements with people who have had the pre-arrangement, it's a different when they
Yeah, it's
actually
a little
have.
different.
It's a much different conversation. Like what would mom want versus this is what mom wanted. So it's a hard thing to do, but it's one of the greatest things you could actually do for your children. I
Okay,
think.
you mentioned this earlier. You also blog.
I do.
How often do you blog? When do you blog? What do you blog about?
So I hadn't done it for a while, but recently I have about 4 up since the start of the year, and I have another one I'm working on this week. I've done different things from what to say when someone passes away, which is basically the advice is don't look for things to say. Sometimes silence is golden. Saying nothing
I
is
read
great.
something recently about telling someone they're in a better place. That's not always the best thing to
it's
say,
not.
is it?
No, again, people are well intentioned, but sometimes they need to refix that connection between your mouth and your brain. But I've done blogs about the military, funerals, TAPS, the honor guard, blogs about. Recently, I did one that we had a funeral for a priest, and it's one of the most, I happen to be Catholic, but even if I wasn't, it's awe-inspiring to do that. It's one of the most unique things that we see at our line of work. I blogged on that. I blogged a bit on the jewelry and what's happening, the magazine, at Cox Graziano. There's other blogs on writing thank you notes or giving food to people when they've
Tell
had
me
a
about
loss.
writing thank you notes. Go back to that. I will text, and I always thank people for things they do, and occasionally I write a letter, but probably not enough.
Well, this is more specifically towards funerals. When to write a thank you note, for people who have these wakes where the whole town comes out, you clearly can't write a thank you note personally to everyone, but it kind of gave them a guide. You personally thank the people who send something, do something over and above a visit. So there's some interesting stuff on there. I think we're one of the few funeral homes who do it, and most funeral homes who have a blog, they pay for it. So this is kind of this is really truly an in-house thing. I've blogged about the changing culture of funerals. This has been a really interesting phenomenon.
Tell me about that.
I've seen. So death waits for no one, as the saying goes.
No kidding.
But it's not exactly true nowadays. I have seen it's such a reflection of life. We're in this world where we can't be inconvenienced. Everything is at our fingertips. You want something, it's instant gratification. So it's kind of, come over into the realm of what I do. For example, if you have a soccer game on, or or you have a work trip, well, then the wake waits. And it's been a really hard phenomenon for me to wrap my brain around. Again,
What do you mean the wake waits?
well, people have kind of delayed wakes and funerals to make it at a more convenient day.
That's interesting.
And it's not something that happens once or twice. I've spoken to industry colleagues as well. We're all experiencing it. Saturdays have become this coveted day for funeral because people say, well, you can't take off of work. Oh, they have school. Oh, it's an easier travel day. Whereas I was raised that, okay, a death happened, life stops. Mm-hmm. You stop in that moment. You honor the life, whether it be you excuse yourself from school or from work.
And then you move on.
People understand, but you need to stop and pause in that moment. So the delayed response to death has been something that I have to say, in the past 2 years, the changes I've witnessed, you would think come over a lifetime, but a bulk of the changes have happened in the past 2 years.
Is it because people are busy, or is it because they're okay? Now,
and they think, again, I'm sorry, this is not the priority that it could just be put off. People, if they have a trip, it's we'll just take the trip. And
wow.
Is
it the same in a sudden death? I mean, if Grandpa's been sick,
not the trip. That's a good question. It's hard to quantify because I've seen people kind of arrange the schedules, and I always tell people, again, you can't stop and think about every single person coming. In this moment, people have to think about you. You set the time, you set the day, and people will find a way.
It's not a wedding.
Exactly. So that's a very recent trend, and I've blogged about that.
What about the length of them? I remember when I was a kid, wakes were 3 days, and then you buried the person on the 4th. Now the typical wake is a day.
So I started,
or maybe a day in the morning. Or
well, it's funny. I started working with my dad when I was full time when I was 14 years old.
Good grief!
And the traditional wake was
only a couple of years ago.
Just
folks.
A handful. A traditional wake was a day and a half. It was like the night viewing 7 to 9, and then 2 to 4, 7 to 9 the next day, and that was like, I'd say 75% of people did that. And then it became the 1 day, 2 to 4, 7 to 9. And then it became the 4 to 8, which is the most common. And, reason being it's in one shot.
And
people after work, you still have some daylight. You get out a little earlier. Now I see a lot of, the morning of, as we call it. So people will gather at the funeral home for about 2 hours in the morning and have a service there. That's a significant change in what I've seen is, from going to church to having the clergy brought into the funeral home. We do still see a lot of wakes, but that is a phenomenon that I've witnessed a change on for sure.
Is the classic, okay, everybody leave, we're going to close the casket now. Is that still as difficult a time over the years, or...
Well, we do it in such a poignant way. And again, I learned from the best with my dad that the morning of a funeral is always a somber time. It lacks the wakes get a little boisterous, if you will. They become like reunions.
Sure.
But the morning of the funeral is a quiet time, quiet reflection. There's usually less people in attendance. It's more for the closer family and friends. Mm-hmm. And we gather people in prayer together, and we call them forward one by one to offer their last respects. That moment where you close a casket is a very mindful moment for me. It's not routine. It's not just this is part of my job. You recognize that this culminates in existence for someone, that they're going home now on their journey, that you always make sure the pillow is tufted. My father always arranged, the inside material of the casket was folded properly. You fixed a dress or a suit one last time, and it was such a sacred moment in my job.
You opened up with that today, that it's a sacred thing.
It really is, and in that moment, perhaps more so in that moment. You just make sure, you actually brush off any flowers that may have come inside the casket.
Mm-hmm.
It means something to me. And I learned that from him.
Boy, again, you get emotional when you talk about this. Again, we're in our closing 10 minutes with Jen Graziano. She is, as you now can figure from her last conversation and last comments, she's a funeral director. She's an executive with Cox and Graziano, the funeral homes, as well as the other funeral home, the only privately owned Jewish funeral home in Westchester, Zion Memorial Chapel. She's an attorney, publisher of Coming of Age magazine, which I'm going to continue to show you, jewelry, etc. But I want to stay with this for a little bit. This is a question that I'm sure you get asked a lot. Do you believe in the hereafter?
Yes.
Okay. Has anything in your work promoted that belief? For example, do you believe, are you ever in the chapel late at night? Maybe they brought in a body and a job, which I know isn't the nomenclature, but do you ever worry about ghosts? Are you ever afraid of the bodies? Or
No. I grew up kind of with a familiarity to death. It was always kind of okay for me. I shield my daughter from it somewhat, even though she comes to work with me a lot. But she's upstairs in my office. No, I never had a discomfort around that. But I do believe in the sense that if you love someone, that just doesn't stop. That doesn't go away. So you continue to love them, and a bond is still living. So you've lost the physical, but you haven't lost the emotional. So I believe that, and for me, I take tremendous comfort in thinking that the chain is linked up again at some point. I understand that's not a belief everybody holds, but I have to believe there's something better and bigger than this life. It grounds you. Again, it makes you realize, it humbles you that, we're here but for a minute, which in the scheme of things we are. There are signs. My father's brother, Joe, was a funeral director as well, and we lost him 5 years ago. And he used to tease me and joke with me about why I chose to go into this. So it's funny, I have his prayer card in my office, and something will happen or something will something that I knew he would have appreciated, and then the card will fall, and I'll say, I get it, Uncle Joe,
Oh, you'll actually say that?
I'll say, should have done something else. But
have you ever, well, there was your Uncle Joe. Have you ever had a close friend or someone pass away and their funeral was done at your chapel, and what was that like?
All
I mean,
the
if you
time.
really knew the person, what's that like?
It's so hard. And it's interesting because in those moments, it's the hardest to do your job, but you feel most compelled to do it because the service that you're giving to people who are, albeit strangers, but you're welcoming them. So how do you not take care of the ones you love? And that was hard. My uncle's funeral was very difficult.
That'd be very difficult.
My grandparents, I was close to all of them.
Now, when your grandparents, did you pass that job on to somebody?
No.
Or you did it yourself?
No. My grandfather, my father's parents were from the city, and my grandfather, he passed away 25 years ago. So that was done, I was young, that was done in the city.
Oh,
Everybody else was done up at our funeral home. Aunts and uncles, friends, dear family friends that we've lost. It's difficult. But again, this is what you think you know how to do best, so you owe it to them to do it. But I will say, 2 years ago, my mother's best friend passed, a good family friend of both my mom and dad, wonderful friend to me, like akin to an aunt, if you will. And it humbles you to realize what other people are going through when they come through your door. And it just kind of calls you back to basics. People are lost. Thing. They can't think. They're not thinking straight. So I think when you go through it kind of just recommits you and reconnects you.
Reinforces what you do for a living. Jen, I have two other lines of questioning before as people get to know you. And the last one will be, what kinds of guests do you anticipate? Where do you see the show going as you go off on this this continued venture? About you, though, what else do you want to do with your life? You're very young, even though you don't believe that like a lot of women I know, but you're very young. You're not even halfway through your life yet. And you have a lot of living to do. You have a relationship, a daughter, a family you love, and I've counted them 5 different occupations, including being a working mother, which I will tell you, I've watched my daughter do it, one of the hardest things on the planet. What else do you want to do?
What do I want to be when
You have
I
a
grow
whole
up?
future.
What do I want to be when I grow up?
What do you want to do? What
you know,
other
I
kinds of
don't
things?
know.
You're in the jewelry business, the magazine business, the blogging business. I can't keep up. I'm getting tired reading your introduction.
It's such a hard question to answer. You know, I want to be happy. I think everybody wants that. I just want to be happy and do whatever it takes to fulfill that.
You are
So,
happy now, though. I can tell.
yeah, no, I am. But again, I'm not a scripted person, as you know.
No
Like,
kidding.
I'm not, and I don't have.
Skydiving next week on the
No, I'm not
Time to
that
Talk.
person. You know, and even I don't believe in like New Year's resolutions. I believe like don't commit to like a goal. Like
No, but what I'm asking you, what other interests? What's lurking in there? The same way the magazine was lurking, radio was once lurking, blogging and writing is lurking.
I want to continue doing it all. I do. I want to continue, and I want to be open to new possibilities and new opportunities as I see them. Like I said, nothing's written in stone. It's an evolving story. You get to rewrite your pages. You erase. You cross out. You keep going, and I want to continue doing all of that. I'm open to any possibilities that come my way. I really want to continue though to raise the level of discourse on the subject of death, dying, planning. Making your loved ones know what you want, having uncomfortable conversations, and the radio and magazine, I'm committed to continuing that dialogue.
Well, that's the bridge I wanted to create to your show. One of the things that you've done rather consistently, and I give you credit for this, your promo, which will be airing, that you did and people heard, you actually heard you record it today, gives homage, rightly so, to Cox and Graziano and the Zion Memorial Chapel. And what you do does weave through. It has threads through everything. You support what they do, but yet that business, that family business, but yet it's very personal for you. I've observed.
It all comes back to that. That's my home, really. It's most funny. My phone thinks it's my home. It all comes back to that. All of my life lessons were learned from there. And they're unique life lessons, and I'm lucky to have learned them. You grew up and you knew the ill-fated consequences of drugs or drunk driving because you saw it, perhaps in a way more clear than other people saw it. Mm-hmm. You saw the effects on parents who lost children.
I don't even know how they do it. I just
there's
don't
nothing
know.
worse. There's nothing where people ask me the worst things that I see, and it has to be a parent losing a child. So you have this heightened awareness. Everything I learned comes back through there. Life and death. I'm so grateful for the upbringing.
No, it's interesting that you say that. It just awakened something in me about there can be no more serious issue than life and death. Mm-mm. And you deal with it every day. But there's nothing trivial about it. There's nothing, you can't make jokes. I mean, people whistle by the graveyard. I get that. And we try and help our friends who are grieving maybe with humor. But there's no conversation. Speaking of your show, and now we'll get to it, Time to Talk, there's no conversation that has less BS in it and more severity than about a loved one dying or who has died.
It's raw. It's real.
Yeah.
And yes, but levity helps a little bit. I've
always used it.
You have to know when to inject levity, but I have to laugh every day. I find humor in the dumbest things. Even the most mindless. Of
you have a good sense
movies
of
and
humor.
shows. I do. No, yeah. I love to laugh, and I that certainly helps. But life and death is real.
But I can see why the
conversation.
And I can see why the conversations are difficult. Okay, before we let you go, this is about your show. And once again, folks, Time to Talk. This is the premiere show of Time to Talk. We've used this premiere show for you to get to know Jennifer Graziano, what interests her, how she ticks, what makes her get up in the morning, in addition to her daughter and having to drop her off at school, in addition to being a talk show host. And she's good at it, as you can tell. She is a funeral director at Cox and Graziano, as well as Zion Memorial Chapel. She's an attorney, the publisher of Coming of Age magazine. She now has a jewelry line. Where do you want to take your show? And this whole new iteration of it as you continue, what can we expect in the weeks and months ahead?
insightful guests talking about the range of topics that we touched upon here this morning. Community interest stories, also some happy, lighthearted stories too. It's not all heavy here.
Oh, no,
and,
it's
and
not.
that's what I think is important too. The show really isn't macabre. It's not somber. No one has ever been off put by it. Whatever we've spoken about, the guests have done an amazing job. But things that we need to think about will be discussed here. And we welcome comments, questions, suggestions, thought-provoking.
Where can they
commentary.
send those, And they can also send them to Bob at
to Bob.
RadioWestchester.com.
Yeah, absolutely. You could take my calls, right?
Yeah. Oh, we'll be taking your calls in the future shows.
And then, but again, Cox and Graziano is where you'll find me. We have a wonderful website, coxandgraziano.com. Phone numbers are on there. Email addresses are on there. It's hard pressed not to find me.
No, it's easy to find you, and we're going to give out some more information in a moment. And folks, believe me, she has a sense of humor. Do you remember when you first came on my morning show, the terrible things I used to do?
Oh my goodness!
Remember
Somebody called actually. Remember the caller
Yeah.
that we had?
They gave me a hard time for kidding you, because I used to say you should call the Chapel Drop Dead Gorgeous because she is an attractive woman.
My goodness!
And then I figured out a way to get a date with you. Come in a body bag and pop out with a bag of flowers. But
It
that
wouldn't be the worst date that I ever had.
No,
I had to think about that.
that would be kind of interesting.
Still wouldn't have made you the worst.
It would. That says a hell of a lot. Well, folks, you've been listening to Time to Talk with Jennifer Graziano, and we're upbeat because we're excited to have her. We wanted you to get to know Jennifer. She has a sense of humor, yes, but she's a great writer. She's a great talk show host, and wow, this has been a lot of fun. And did you learn anything about yourself that you didn't know today?
Well, that spotlight shining on me is showing me I got to do my makeup a little better next week. But
you
no.
look great.
But no, this was great,
I'm
Bob.
biased.
It's so nice to be able to sit and chat with you. We've always had a great rapport, and looking forward to next Wednesday.
Well, yes, and I want to remind people, this is Radio Westchester. The program is Time to Talk, starring Jen Graziano. She'll be with you every other Wednesday. It'll probably grow after that because she likes to do a lot of things. She's never really satisfied. Time to Talk with Jen Graziano. Jen, great job, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Bob. Have a great day, Westchester. Bye-bye.
And remember, if you want to get a hold of Jennifer, the websites, please.
Is www.coxe, and spelled out, Graziano, Graziano.